The International Festival of Arts and Ideas is created and produced on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Paugussett, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac, in the land we all call home, Connecticut. We hope that from wherever you are, you take a moment to acknowledge and honor the native people whose land you are on and the history of the place you are in.
The International Festival of Arts and Ideas stands in solidarity with Black and Brown communities and other groups who are targeted and abused by unjust systems of oppression. We support all movements working to decenter white voices and dismantle white supremacy. We are actively seeking to dismantle systemic racism, and we raise our voices with those in our community who are already engaged in this vital work. We commit to working alongside you to create transformative change in New Haven and in our global community.
Welcome. I wanted to introduce both Neville and Prajjé here on stage.
Hi.
First and foremost. And just to say hello and to welcome you to the Yale Repertory Theater and to those watching on NBC and Telemundo virtual stage at the 27th Annual International Festival of Arts and Ideas. My name is Aaron Peirano Garrison, and I am a filmmaker who's been working with Neville for the last 4 years on a film project. That's kind of how I got to be here with these two gentlemen today. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank Connecticut Humanities, whose partnership makes the Ideas program possible and ensures that we can continue to present over a dozen talks this year for free. A quick thank you to the festival marquee sponsors who are helping to bring you more than 200 events in this June: Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, Yale University, National Endowment for the Arts, Connecticut Office of the Arts, City of New Haven, and again, our friends at Connecticut Humanities. Make sure you check out the full list of programming at artsandideas.org. Iconic fashion show, there are still a few tickets left. Bryant Terry, author of Black Food Tomorrow at 3 p.m. And now it's a great pleasure to introduce today's talk, Neville Wisdom, who has been working for well over a decade in the city of New Haven, but for the greater part of his life as a fashion designer, and really doing things in a way I think that we'll find very, very interesting as we talk today. And it's my first day to meet, at least in person, Prajjé. Prajjé is a Haitian-born, US-based designer. His design philosophy is rooted in a commitment to tradition and savoir-faire, through simplicity and understated elegance. So true. Edgier and modern elements also allow customers to express their personal style through clothing that exudes elegance, luxury, and modernity. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Towards the end of the show, you'll be able to access, we'll have a question and answer time. On the back of your programs, you'll find a Q&R code, and that will allow you to dial in a question if you have one of those. So the last 15 minutes of the show we'll devote to just sort of having an interaction with the audience. So each of these questions will be directed to both of you, and we really just want to foster a kind of conversational environment. And feel free to take these questions wherever way, in whatever direction that you like. Both of you lived in the Caribbean and the U.S. Mainland. And how has that influenced your approach to design?
You want to go for it? Well, I mean, as you heard, my philosophy is rooted into my traditions and culture. So definitely right off the bat, pretty much everything I do make reflect that. For me, it's a little different because I come from a country where all you hear is a negative. You don't usually see or hear positivity coming out of Haiti, especially most recently. So for me, very early on, I remember it was, we were just explaining earlier today, I was doing All on the Line, and Josie asked me, he was the editor of Elle, like, what makes you so special? And honestly, I didn't know what to answer because I immediately saw what he meant, and then I went and then kind of figured out what Prajjé Oscar would be. And I realized there were so many Project Oscars out there, but there was no Haitian Project Oscar. So that day, if this is going to be the route for me, it needs to be built on, my grandmother dressing to go to church on Sunday, wearing an undergarment. We don't see that anymore. Wearing gloves, you don't really see that anymore. Black pearls, you don't see that anymore. So my brand is kind of bringing those little details that I grew up with, the big hats, all that stuff, but make it modern, make it more relatable to everyone. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Beautiful.
Well, excuse me, I definitely started, like my interest started in clothing because it made me feel a certain way if I could rock something, especially something that I made or something I designed. And so that's how my love for it developed. And my personality is a representation of the stuff that I make, the designs that I create. But it also is influenced by Vogue magazines. I remember we had a giant Vogue magazine at the house, and I would just always keep going through the pictures, just constantly looking at it. But then there's also the Jamaican energy where people like to get fly, dress up, and go out and party. Jamaicans like to party.
Yeah. I think that's where we're kind of similar. Haitians, right. I mean, you're not allowed to not dress up to go to the neighbor's house because they're throwing a party. Yeah. You have to dress up.
I remember when we were growing up, my mother used to say, when you leave the house, be prepared to end up anywhere, So we used to, and this is probably a little bit different, but Aaron said I can go wherever I want, and this memory just came in my head. So there's this coconut trees, and the leaf, we call it the bough, that comes off of the coconut trees. We would cut the end part off of it, and we'd find like a really steep hill, especially when the dew is on the water, and we would sit on it, but it's not wide enough to like hold your butt cheeks on, and we would slide down the hill, and so most of her pants didn't have holes in them, so in the butt. But she always emphasized, like, when you go out, you should definitely wear stuff. So if you have to go and represent yourself, then you're represented well. And then I fell into a weird space with my brothers and sisters where I had a brother that was a little bit taller, bigger, was stout, and then I had a little scrawny brother who was 4 years younger than me. And so whenever we kind of got clothes that were bought for us that they didn't really know what they were doing, I was the in-between kid who sort of like just created my own fashion out of them. So that's pretty much how it developed. I'm still learning, still trying to find myself. I think I'm closer to understanding who I am as a designer, but it's definitely a combination of classic designs with a little funk. Yeah.
I know Neville, you had said that even black and white films had some influence. Is it the color? Is it the... What about black and white films?
Well, I think it's just black and white films because that's all we had was a black and white TV. So they were probably colored films, but at the time it was like one of those. My family had like a really interest in history because there was one time when we were probably like seemed like our lives were pretty wealthy, and then there was a sharp turn of poverty all in the same breath. And the television was one of our high points, I guess. So Jamaica is, third world, they say. And so the culture, at the time, there was only like one television station. And so the films that they were showing were films that they could access. And so a lot of Humphrey Bogart movies, and I'm not very good with names, so I can't remember too much, but I watched a lot of that stuff. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang every day, all the time, you know. Raising in the Sun. Raising in the Sun. Yeah, there was some pretty dresses in that. And stuff like that. And so all of those things have influenced the sort of like prep with the sort of like ragamuffin that I was kind of like going through at the time. And so there's this constant battle too with that I share with like fabric and control and also being able to allow the fabric to be itself. So there's that constant battle too all the time. But somehow they work out. They compromise. I compromise, I guess.
Yeah.
Or they compromise the fabrics.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
For me, I mean, how my growing up, it wasn't that easy. There was TV there, but what's the point of turning it on? Nobody was in the house. We were all outside. But I used to play in my grandmother's closet, and I think that's where it started. I literally, grandma goes to work. It's like play dress up all day. And when that, you know, if we left the Capitol House, we go to the farm because my grandmother was a farmer, so we spent a lot of time in the farm. And I would be that kid that makes clothes for the corn. And I did say that on national TV, and everybody laughed at me. I'm like, it's true. I made clothes for the corn. It had hair. I just stick a stick there, and the next thing you know, she's getting married. And it started that way. It wasn't until well into my teenage year when I'm adopted, and when I got to the U.S. and my adopted parents realized, oh my God, what is he doing? This is something here. No Haitian parents want their kids to be designers or artists. We want you to be a doctor, go to Yale, and become a lawyer. Saying you wanted to be a designer might cost you a couple teeth, so it never is something we discussed. But when I did come here, my mom was like, oh no, there is something there. And I remember I showed up to the U.S. on a Saturday, and Monday morning I was enrolled in an art class at Mass Art. And I've been designing since then. So that's how it started.
Yeah, you were saying your summers were spent.
My summers, I hated every kid that had vacation because I never had one. Spring break, Christmas break, summer vacation, my mother and my dad made sure I had something to do. And it was art class at Mass Art. So I've been going to Mass Art since my high school days.
Right.
It's an amazing school, a really special school. Yeah, I visited there, and the culture is it just permeates.
Amazing
place. Like wraps around you in a way.
Yeah.
You both work in different kind of business models. Could you please tell us about those, and what's the most important sort of concept in them, or concepts? How are they changing in the new world environment?
For me, early on, and from that conversation, of course, I wanted my brand to be something different. Right off the bat, I did not want to have 12 of everything. It's not my thing. But I built, based off our old Chanel concept, is privately owned, stays in the family, built on heritage, quality versus quantity. So over the years, I've worked a lot with private clienteling, small batch in the collections, not so much everything. I don't want you to walk into a room and everyone looks like you. It's not my thing. It's personally, as a consumer, I hate it. If I come here and you have my shirt on, I guarantee you I will walk outside, find a store, buy a new one. I really hate it. And I kind of design the same way for my customers. I don't want you to walk into a room and everyone's wearing Prajjé Oscar, and then now you're not standing out like I promised you to. So my brand is very, private clienteling, but because of the pandemic, I was I went through a real tough 2 months figuring out, like, oh God, is this how my career ends? Like, nobody's buying clothes, nobody's buying this expensive skirt. Like, what am I supposed to do? I can't go to nursing school now. I'm old. Like, what is happening? I went to a real tough time, really, like, is this the end? And then I somehow after a lot of fighting, dive into mask making, and thank you, mask.
Thank you, mask.
Thank you, mask, because
Thank you, mask.
it definitely did. Not only did it shift my focus a little bit to think more business oriented. It's hard to make an artist think business, and for over my entire 20 years of designing, I never married the two, and I did that during the pandemic. And because of my mask, I just moved to Philly. New York was a little bit tougher. I was in New York for 10 years, and I couldn't really have my atelier in my house because it's a lot of rent. I saved up. I sold so many masks that I saved enough money that I went on to Project Runway. Right after Project Runway, literally, I showed up home, took a few weeks to get my mind right, and then moved into my atelier. Now we have a full running atelier in Fishtown, Philadelphia. And I can say that the deposit for that space was from the pandemic, which taught me to move online. So this line here, we create this whole line. I realized that we're doing these type of things. You're not seeing the bottom. I barely had pants on half the time. And I mean, it's the truth. We're all doing it. And I designed a line that looked good from the waist up. And now the line have expanded to shoes and sports bra. We just launched a summer version of these. We use drop ship. It's easier that way. It's better that way for me. That's how I help the environment. Don't produce it if you're not selling it. And then now we are moving more into, more distribution. Maybe those, instead of 3 store, let it go, girl. Make it 6. That's where we are now. So it's changing. And of course, from being at Project Runway, I've been to mass art. I'm Haitian. The art is in me, but I never cared to be an artist on my clothes. I like it clean, finished. Now, let me tell you, honey, you give me some paint, it's everywhere. So there is that artist that is kind of coming out, and he wants to make a little appearance in the collection. And there are these little changes there between online, the artistry part. A lot of things are changing. It literally is a new project. Yeah.
I love what you were saying about designing clothes that look good from the waist up, because we're all sitting also, right? We're stuck in one place, and that changes everything as well, the way that a clothing hangs.
So it definitely was a thing for me with that pandemic. I learned a lot about me and also as a designer as well.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was a huge shocker for all of us, a lot of us. In the beginning, I was sure that this was going to be the end of my Connecticut-based design company or whatever. I was going to have to figure something out. But I had a really lovely 3 weeks. I wasn't worried about it, which I was more concerned about the pandemic than I was concerned about what was going to happen to my company. And so I took the first 3 weeks that everything was locked down, and I slept. I slept and I cooked. And my partner, who didn't even know I could cook at the time, started like, why have you been holding this from me? why have you been cooking all this time? And then similar thing, I went into mask making, and that was actually a huge success for us as well. It helped us to move. We closed two of our basically 2 locations, and then moved into a space. And I remember having conversations with Yale at the time about what was happening, and we figured out a space on Broadway would be big enough for us to have our atelier in our studio. That's kind of like our thing, where you come in and see us just like designing stuff and making stuff in the back part of the store. It's all connected as one. And like Prajjé, we very concerned about our environment. Painting on clothes, not so much me, but fabrics are my thing. I had to ban myself from going to the fabric stores because I'd spend more money than I could afford, and I'm just buying things that I don't necessarily have like a purpose for right now, but it's beautiful and I just grab it. So Lauren had to stop me. And designing, we definitely, we use whatever we have access to. I haven't printed anything. I don't know if I'll change, but I love that shirt.
This is actually a women's shirt, so it's for the ladies in here.
Well, I mean, our clothes, I'd like to think of my clothes sometimes too as like non-binary as well, where there's definitely not a gender placed in it. But we like to make limited stuff. I usually buy whatever we can find in terms of the fabrics, 20, 40 yards, maybe 50 yards, the most we've ever bought of anything. We will do a collection, sort of a collection, not really big, where we'll make a set of sizes, and then we'll change the colors, and then we'll run it for as long as people are buying it. We have dresses that we, from my first collection when I started designing again, that we still sell, and we can reproduce them because we keep all of our patterns together and stuff like that. Our studio is really just, it's an atelier that's connected to a storefront. Really interesting concept, and it gives customers a taste of the process of clothes, because that has been like drummed away. This whole fast fashion and the idea of buying clothes for cheap has even though we all do.
I don't want to name them.
we all do. We all love it. We're all sinners.
But it is it's somewhat a problem, because it kind of take away the craftsmanship from constructing clothes. And people think you can just make anything, and the thread is falling apart, and it's okay.
The technical part of it is really super intriguing to me. I'm pretty sure there's definitely some things that we could like relate to, like on a, like we were from the same place because of our culture. Haitian culture has definitely been a part of Jamaica as well for a long time, and there are similar dresses with the head wraps, and some of the dresses that I saw today in your
you can see our room. You see a little bit of that.
I could see it coming out. I'd be like they're like dancing in a a party or something, then going to church looking fly. Definitely still trying to, for me it's always been about where I am at a particular time in my life, and I never know what direction that goes. I have some ideas of some things that I want to do, but for right now, I want to just be an artist and really think about clothes in a way more that's associated with design as it relates to a specific individual who's always somewhere there. But I really want to enjoy the process of design without limitations. And that's where I think I am right now.
Yeah, that kind of brings us to what I have here for my next question, which is give us a little glimpse of your creative process, and maybe however you'd like to present that, through a story or...
For me, I'm actually in designing mode right now. I'm designing my collection for September, the first one after Project Runway. Took a long break. But before this collection, I usually I only make one collection a year, and just like you, I sell the pieces until the last one is done. And then I sell everything until the next one. So it usually is a 3 months process of research. Whatever is moving me to that collection, I like to know what I'm getting myself into and know facts. I'm a little OCD there. So there's a 3 month process of research, and then we move into sketching, and I would have an idea of fabrics, designing of my print. I'll produce my own print as well. And we're going to, I just did that a few weeks ago in New York. We'd get all of fabrics. But I noticed on your question, when you do get to the fabric store, in my case, half of the collection changed. Oh, yeah. I came home and my team was like, wait, what happened to that board? I'm like, no, we're creating a new board. So we're back now bringing pieces. You know, you walk into the fabric store, there's something that moves you. Your print you were going to do on solid nights end up being chiffon, so the look changed. So that's pretty much kind of what the process goes, and then we go into making the collection, and we, you know, the marketing part, the lookbooks, the photo shoots, and then the runway shows. We go to market, and then that will go into the boutiques we select, or online store or on atelier, and then we split them into a few quarters. So we'll kind of like release a quarter of the collection, the first part, another quarter, second part, another quarter, the third part. So that way you're not seeing the same thing all throughout the year, but it's the same huge collection I did, let's say in September, and until the next year.
Yeah. Prior to the pandemic, we would do just about 3 shows every year that we curated ourselves. The spring show always changed places. There's always some interesting place that we decide to do, and then we would do a show at the New Haven Lawn Club that helped out with helping to keep people off the streets, give them somewhere to live. And we did that for almost a decade. And that typically took place somewhere in April. That was our second show of the year. And then in September sometime, we would close down a street for a number of years. And we would do a runway. We'd kind of take over the street, and we would include the individuals from our community and customers primarily as part of our shows to, you know, speak to the individuals who are buying our products so that they can see themselves in it, because so often people will say to me, well, I can't wear that. And I'm like, well, you can wear anything you want.
Yeah.
It's just really about confidence.
Yeah.
I get up in the morning and I try to find what's in front of me pretty much most of the times. Today I just could find these brown pants and this yellow shirt with floral prints. This is not curated.
Yeah. And here I am out here in a women's shirt. You can't wear anything.
Right. Yes, and but now we have a smaller team. I want to talk about Dwayne. Dwayne is a young black male that's been in our studio, and he designs there for himself. We have a young woman, Bushra, who worked with the company back in the days, and then she decided to design, so we're sharing our atelier with her as well. And so it feels like Neville Wisdom is moving towards a shared space for creative individuals that wouldn't typically have the access to storefront and the equipment that I own, to give voices to creative individuals so that we can actually make a difference with how people perceive clothes, or they look at it from the standpoint of it's actually somebody makes it and feel good about buying something that they can connect to.
Yeah. And to add to that last part, I think one of the things for me is now making clothes that I'm still wearing some of my grandmother's accessories and jackets. My dad loves to give me his old, war uniforms, and I have them, and I change the sleeve. So now even in my designing, I'm moving very much so a lot more into making clothes that you can pass down to your kids. Not only because it's timeless, but also it's very well made, that in the fabric also. it's not gonna fall off on you. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Appreciating clothes.
I love this idea of like timelessness, and it seems to really influence both of you in the way that you approach things. And this idea of process, and you mentioned that you have an idea, you go look at fabrics, and then that influences the idea in some way. Or I could imagine that happening as well if you're painting fabrics. All of a sudden you're
Sometimes it's just somebody walking down the street.
Yeah, it is true.
Somebody passed you, and you were like, "What?
What? I like that." Yeah.
And then it just stays in your head. You know, one of the crazy things that I've been like trying to figure out too is how my brain sort of like stores things.
Yeah.
You know, like am I truly connecting with that memory that I had, or is it, twisted, through the process, and not being able to identify the actual root of where it comes from is kind of fascinating. And so design just takes me into like a place of just like Alice in Wonderland type situation where I just dive into it, and it just kind of blossoms into this piece, and that's actually nice.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
I write everything down. The same thing. I walked on the street and somebody's light is in the window somehow, somewhere. That's interesting to me, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody's light in Tell Street. Write it right there. And I'll go to my house. Receipts have notes. She had a red dress on. What does that even mean? And a receipt. So it really is that, and everything. I mean, I understand that, my brand is based on my culture and everything, but everything moved me. I will make Haiti mix with LA in no time. Like, it's the way to make the marriage. And tonight, if you come to the show, you'll see there's a lot of, today and here and now, and without a glimpse of leaving my culture behind. You see all of it right through the clothes. And that's kind of like what I've been mastering over the years, making the two look like they belong.
And it holds together, right?
Yeah.
Because
everyone can wear it. I always say I'm not a Haitian brand. I'm a global brand. So I make clothes for everyone. But the story we're talking about today is a Haitian story.
Listening to Neville, did you have something to say?
No, I'm good.
Oh, just listening to the two of you talk about this, and I'm thinking about designers who must, at some time get bogged down by the sort of commercial aspects and demands that are on their work when things get bigger and bigger and spiral out of control. But both of you are wearing your own work, and it seems to me that it holds together because of that intimacy that by the time it's realized, it hasn't moved away from that journal very far.
Right. Well, today I'm actually rocking a shirt from Mark Anthony. He was in
Nice.
Because we collaborated in Jamaica on a couple of things. Nice. He's a shirt designer, and he's actually in the film today. And I was like, I'm just gonna rock Mark's shirt today. So this is actually Mark's shirt.
Can I tell a little story on you, Neville?
We love stories.
On process, I'll keep it brief because I'm more interested in what you all have to say. Maybe you'll have something to say about this project. But one day I showed up with a camera at the studio, and Neville was making a shirt, and I had just assumed he was fulfilling an order, or he had some obligation to make this shirt, but in fact, he was making the shirt he was going to wear in an interview that day and with a local television station, and so I got to film this process sort of being birthed. I started off thinking about this last night. I don't know if you want to talk about this as how things sometimes just need to come out, even if it's not timely.
Yeah, there's always that designer, that creative process, which is my most enjoyed moment. But it seems to always appear at quote unquote the wrong time, which is never a wrong time for an inspiration, but it could be difficult living with anyone or just people in general. I feel like I'd have to be like on Gilligan's Island or something to be able to like tap into it and know that I don't have to go anywhere I could just really go into it. But it always seems to rear its head when I have somewhere to be. And like 10 minutes before or an hour before, that inspiration hits me, and then I'm just like deep in it, and it's very difficult to break away from that. It's a tough thing, but so sometimes when I do have the time, when it comes and I get to like create something, I'll just go with it.
Yeah.
And you were on time.
Oh.
We made it there on time. Everything was on time.
Yeah.
Love these cultures. Color.
Pardon?
The color.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
Almost matching.
Really, almost match.
Give us so we looked at process from concept to design. Well, I think I missed my next question. The reality, is that the world is changing around us constantly, and we only have a few minutes before we open this up to, to the audience, and then we'll also take some questions from them as well. And it's so exciting to hear you guys talk about the way in which the pandemic, the demands of a pandemic that's sort of imposing on our world, shape the way that you conduct business. Here, the world is shutting down, and creatives, in a way, are rebirthing the way that we're approaching it. I think it's amazing the sort of resilience there.
Yeah.
And I think I'm hearing you talk a lot about resilience, not just in the way that you think and act and work as creatives, but also in the way that culture is informing the work.
I mean, it was a tough time. We all went through it. I've seen things. I pray to God we never have to go through ever again. It was tough, but at the same time, even as a creative, growing to my mind, like, oh God, is this how it ends? It's just not just about me. I'm thinking about my entire class, that student that I teach. They're learning to be designers. Is it? What do they do now? They're already halfway to school. My designer friends, so people with the boutiques, Fifth Avenue, Macy's, like, what's going to happen? It kind of brings you to that space. And you wake up one day, you're like, you know what? Somebody wants to buy a mask. We're going to keep this moving, and we're going to rebuild again. We've always been, and I'm talking about collectively, as all of us here, we've always rebuilt. It doesn't matter how hard and how horrible it's gone. Once we've gone through the storm, we've always come together. And I'm grateful to say, from friends and family and customers, loyal customers, very, very loyal customers, it kind of keep that momentum going where you kind of do want to be resilient, you do want to work. Even fashion have always been my therapy, but during the pandemic, it definitely was my therapist. So it keeps that going, and it's kind of like part of, let's rebuild together in my own little corner, hiding.
Resilience was always something I learned from an early age growing up. Growing up in a community where you like clothes and you like to play dress up is not something that people take kindly. And so the boys in my community, even though I was very outdoors and I could climb the tallest tree and I could play really good cricket and I was good at soccer, but I had that soft side where I was totally into playing dolly-house with my sisters, and that relationship, my styling their hair when they wanted to go to school or to church or picking out their outfits. That was something that that taught me resilience, because I was just firm about who I understood who I wanted to be really early, and if somebody tried to tell me something else, it just wasn't gonna happen. And I think I just grew up pretty much that way, and so it's just a part of me to be resilient. I don't even think about it anymore. I just think about like what it is that I'm gonna do, or what am I allowed to do, and if I can't get to do the thing that I want to do, then I can probably do something close to it that can bring me as much comfort as what I want to. Or sometimes the thing that I want to do isn't the thing that I should be doing. And nature has a way of working that out for me sometimes. I just keep my positive attitude, and it all just comes together.
Yeah. I found it. I had to go to my phone. So that kind of does set us up to think about sort of the vision, if there is anything that you hope to bring. By the way, I just want to pause and say I hope my my boys were listening, my children were listening to that, because I think that's so important. And I didn't also find that kind of support, and I just really appreciated what you were saying there, Neville, and what actually Prajjé was saying similar things earlier, and we need to hear those things. If there's a vision that you really have that sort of drives in any way the work that you're doing, what is it that you want to convey through your couture?
I mean, we're talking about young folks, that's what we're getting at. It was never easy for me growing up. Actually, it was hopeless in a way, if you want to think about it that way. And for me to make this much now, I think it's something that every young kid should see. And I think that was my driving factor to go on Project Runway, was so that, young boys like me can actually see that if there's something that you want to do, even if you're not getting the support, whether your country, we live in a great country, guys, I tell you that. But if you do live in a country where, opportunities and the idea of being an artist is not on the table, and that you feel like this is what you want to do it. And push through. It's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be really, really tough, especially when you have no support and you don't have an environment that can nurture that. But I would never tell you to stop. I would say educate yourself and get a grip on whatever it is that you're doing, but continue doing it. And I spoke about this openly on Project Runway. I'm no one's role model. I'm not taking that crown, but I hope, what I do with my hands and my story from being born with a young mother who died early and leave me behind with a grandmother, and my grandmother left me in a country all alone and joined. It's a long story. It would take us a whole other day. To now, you can too. You just need that one person by your side, and if you do have it, if you don't, just keep going at it and just perfect your craft. Yeah. And stand for something, who you are.
Yeah, I share your sentiments with that for sure. There is always sort of like the hope to come to America, because America is the place where you can be most expressive, and be accepted for your expression and who you are, or your thought process. And definitely true, as a black man in America, having the ability to do what we do as designers is definitely not something that you see a lot of. So we hope that we can inspire each other, especially because of our journey has been so far and definitely hard for both of us. It's not been easy. It would have been easier if I had this mindset when I was younger. But
life would be so much different for me.
But yeah, it's like clothing. What I really wish is for people to really think about clothing from and fashion from also the standpoint of an everyday thing. It's what we do all day long, from the morning we get up to the time we go to bed. It's all about fashion. You're wearing something someone made, and so we all have our own fashion that we do as individual, and I love that people can celebrate that as we move forward and just think about clothes more and fashion, which is the two are in one, no matter whether it's somebody thinks it's bad or it's good. I really think about how it gets to them and what impact that has on the future of this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see that world sort of. It always feels like it's spiraling in some way out of control, gets smaller, and more intimate. Listening to the two of you talk about that vision, and we want to open it up to the audience. And if you hadn't already used the code on the back, you can use your phone to access a Google survey, which will allow you to place a question. And I want to ask for support from the staff so that I can pull this up over here, and this is how we're going to receive them. I'm not seeing the... And so can we open it up to the audience? Is that all right?
Yeah.
We'd love to, and I don't know, is it possible to lower the lights, or is that bad for us online? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's bad for us online because of the viewing audience. I don't know if they could see us if we did that. Are you guys able to see the audience well enough if we do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm blind anyway, so.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I'm blind anyway, so I probably wouldn't see when the light was on.
And I'll meanwhile keep an eye out over here too.
Yeah.
Would
So
anybody like to ask a question?
Yeah.
Mics.
Yeah, for
Do you want me to
safety.
ask you a question? Do you want me to ask a question for you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
we're also live streaming, so it's for that. I can know.
It's just each of these artists has gotten stronger and stronger over time, it seems, as they've encountered obstacles and come forward in their work. And I just wonder if there's a way when you're thinking about, should I do this? Is there, you had a real drive to do it, but for someone who loves clothes but isn't sure if they're a designer, how might you think about that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think for us, it seems like it was just a driving force that led us down a path where we just stuck with, and became the persons that we are. It's difficult for me to point, to give an advice to what might that thing be. But if I would say, from my knowledge, definitely you sort of like know in your mind. You know, you somehow know your senses are how the way they tingle or the way you get excited about something. And if you allow yourself to listen to yourself, I think it will always lead you in the path that you need to go.
And you can also always, once this is it for you, which you will know, I agree. One thing about design, I always tell my students that, or other designers, I'm not impressed with your first collection. I want to see the second one. Now, if fashion is really for you, there will be a second one.
Right.
If it's not, trust me, you are quitting at that first one. It's that easy. It's not just making a dress. We're doing this show right now. I have 4 of my staff with me. I have a wardrobe creative director. It's a whole thing. And
it's a process.
from sketching to fabric selection to designing to produce the clothes and what you're going to do with it after. You end up spending $3,000 on a collection. Do you hope to make that back? Or you just lose $3,000? If you're really a designer, you should be like, I want that $3,000 back plus more so I can make more clothes. But that's also a whole different ball game. So honestly, if it is for you, you will know. But if it's something that you feel like that is there that you want to tap into, I would say just try it. Take some sewing classes, take some summer classes, some program at the schools with fashion. And I'm sure at the end you will find out if it is for you. If it is for you, there will be a fire burning inside, and it will never stop. It would never go out. But if it's not for you, trust me, you will call me and be like, Prajjé, you're right. I ran out of that class and I never went back.
It's hard. It's tough. It's tough. And I see people quit all the time.
Oh, yeah.
All the time because it's intensive. At times it's long hours, especially putting shows together. I remember when we put on our shows, me and Lauren would be just going crazy for weeks and weeks and weeks. And on top of that, we were trying to run the business as well, and try to figure out how to be creative. There's a lot of avenues to design, and I guess you just have to kind of like get into it to figure out what part.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I have two teams right now. I have the designing and then I have production team. We're planning shows. The planning of the show happen at the same time I'm designing because you can't plan the show in a month. You do have to do a 6 month for a proper show. So there's that. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of different components. There's press, there's marketing, there's business, there's pricing. You have to know how to price your garments. You need to know how to really get a discount at the fabric store. This is $12 a yard. Well, no, I have 8. And we're like, no, I can give it to you for 8. Well, what about 9? You have to hustle. Like, it's a lot. You know? Yeah.
And sometimes reinventing the fabric, apparently.
Yeah, and sometimes you might have recently went to my archives, and there are some dresses that I've done when I was in college, like they're vintage 15 years dresses. I cut them up and create new stuff. It's time for a new thing. I just didn't have the money to buy more fabric because I went over my budget. So I'm like, we're cutting this dress and we're turning it to something else. So yeah, reinventing is always there. You will find all of that as you are exploring.
Julie has a question for us, and the question is, who is your dream client to design for? And Julie, you may not be right here in this room, but
She is.
Is she?
Yeah.
I'm curious if that means throughout all of history, possibly, right? Because that could mean just about anybody.
Wow. I don't know if I've ever thought about design for a singular person, like one person that I would like to design for the most. I don't think I have one.
For me, I've always wanted to dress Whitney Houston. It was my thing because, and it's easier to listen to Whitney Houston. It's everywhere. We love Whitney. So it was always my dream to design for Whitney Houston. And of course, Michelle Obama was an obsession again. That didn't work, but I do have a list now. I try not to put it out because I'm in this new thing where I just don't speak of it until it's actually done. But I do have a list. There are 3 contenders on there. Rihanna is one I will share because I think she's from the Caribbean and she represents culture. It fits within my brand, and she's bad. She's just bad. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, she's one of them, and we're going to keep the other 2. You'll see them.
There, just as I'm sitting here thinking about it, there was one person that I wanted to design for, and Jody is a good customer of ours. And she was in charge of the preschool that my sons went to. And I remember seeing her and I thought to myself, this lady's so fly. I would love if she wore one of my clothes or something that I made. And when I opened up my first shop, I made a dress that I call the Red Sox dress because it had the stripes. It was the same similar color. And she walked into the store and she fell in love with it and bought it and that was actually fantastic, and I've made
Nice.
multiple stuff for her. So I think it's more people for me that I've come to know on a personal level as opposed to these mythical characters.
But I love one that
We're also awesome.
level of intimacy you're describing, and so much so that it's like someone who's actually shaping the life of your children as well, which I hear both of you coming from a very similar place. And also the answer, Prajjé, that you're giving, which is these are both performers that you, or at least two of the people you mentioned
Yeah.
are performers, and that sounds like a tall order.
It
And
is.
to move in those fabrics and
It's a whole different ball game, but you know, it's a dream.
keep the dream alive.
Yeah.
We have another response. Let's see if we can get to Esther. Is there a newer designer you really love, their work or their story, who we should look out for and support?
You know, in terms of the big designers, I kind of stopped looking. It's for my own design aesthetic so that I don't get too influenced of what I'm seeing. But I've always been an Oscar guy. But lately, I've been focusing more on the designers that I can reach. My graduating class at Harcum College last semester, there was one very impressive girl, which name I cannot remember right now, but I can still visualize all her clothes, and it was beautiful. I say, hey, tell me about your collection. She said she's going fishing. I'm like, in these shorts? And when she described it to me, I was like, I want to go fishing with her. And it was so out of the box, so inventive. Is that the proper word? And I honestly was like, how is she gonna make that? Is this gonna be a problem to sew? And when I went to review them, and her collection was near perfect, and that I was just like, you are going to be tough one. And also I worked I'm a creative director for Philly Fashion Week, so we produced the Moore College runway show. Listen, get your wallets ready because there are a bunch of brand new designers coming and they're good. And even in my standard, they're good. And I saw these students, one of them made this coat out of carpet. It was literally walking outside on the grass, but you're carrying it. I walked in, I'm sorry, honey, I have to put on your coat. I put it on and I was like, this is so fabulous. They were amazing. So right now I'm focusing on nurturing a lot of young designer students from school. And I would look on these two schools, more in Harcum College, and yeah, there's some good work there. Just those two, right at the top of my head.
Yeah, I still have designers that I admire that I've never met, but I love their work. But my favorite designer right now is Dwayne. And I'm getting all emotional stuff. I've watched him grow so much, and his work has improved tremendously. He has so much passion about it. He's my favorite designer.
Aww.
Neville refers to Dwayne as like a son. And yeah, I can speak from experience that he is a beautiful person.
Yeah.
Really special.
In Jamaica, they say when you're born in a rainy month, you like to cry. So that's my excuse. Maybe it's the lighting.
Is that what it is? I'm always crying. Because I'm from the mountains in Haiti. I'm like, anything. Just
October,
tears. But yeah, I mean, you get influenced with the young designers that especially when you have something to do at the time or whatever, you become very, I'm not crying today because I refuse. But
I wasn't trying.
when I'm telling you, these kids are good. They're good. It's just amazing to see. And you can hear their stories, some of them, for somebody like Chastity from Project Runway that said, I learned from YouTube. Half of my class at Harcum, they started in YouTube. My best assistant of all time. His name is Luke Victor. He learned from YouTube, and then he moved from YouTube to my atelier, and I trained him for 2 years. Now he's working for a big fashion company. I was very happy to let him go because it was not a loss for me. It was more of a gain to see this kid that learned from YouTube, that, you know, worked with me for 2 years, where I trained him in haute couture. Like, literally, he showed up, I'm not here. She's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, you'll figure it out. And then he did. And now he works for a big company as a designer. And that is, you know, that's where I am now, you know. So
There's another person that I'm truly proud of, too. She doesn't consider herself a designer. She's a stylist. It's Lauren Sprague. She's awesome. That's all.
Yeah.
Lauren's here today.
Yeah.
I've also seen those two in action. Yeah. We have 30 seconds left. So rather than try to fit another question in, I'm sure that you can find Neville in the shop sometimes here locally, as at least someone who you could continue to dialogue with. I thank everyone for being here today. It's really special to hear this. And I know I'm soaking all that up as a creative as well, and new in my career as a filmmaker. So I really appreciate hearing all this inspiring conversation and being a part of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for everybody coming out and being here with us today.
Thank you. Yay. Well, we hope to see you guys tonight at the show.
Yes, you better. You better.
Please come. Yeah, and Dwayne will also be on
Dwayne is going to be showing a collection
Yes.
too with us. It's all three of us in one. It's going to be a compilations of the three designers that are in the studio right now that we're working out of.
Thank you for rescuing that important piece of information.
Yes, please come. We were having so much fun, we forgot.
I like these talks. I get to know people that I don't know.